In 1913, a French company called Société Chimique de Javel began selling something they called eau de Javel. It was the first mass-produced liquid bleach, and across the Atlantic, the Clorox company launched their own version that same year, pricing it at 5 cents per gallon. You know what a gallon of bleach costs today in the supermarket. You know that 5-cent price tag has turned into something that feels like a tax on just getting your clothes white. 90% of what you pour into your washer is water. That's the truth that the industry built its fortune on. The active ingredient, the thing that actually whitens, is a fraction of the bottle. The rest is delivery system. If you've ever stood in that fluorescent aisle comparing prices and still felt like you lost, you know the quiet anger I'm talking about. You are the one who reads the fine print. And what you are about to read is that you have been paying a premium for something that costs 25 cents to make it home. It goes back further than Clorox. It goes back to 1789, when a French chemist named Claude-Louis Berthollet first produced a solution of sodium hypochlorite while trying to create something called eau de Javel for whitening textiles. He published his findings in a book called Essai de statique chimique in 1803. The French army adopted it for disinfecting uniforms in 1798. It was a wartime innovation, a way to sanitize wool and cotton in the field. And then the peacetime marketers got hold of it. 90% water, 10% active ingredient. That ratio has not changed in over a century, but the price has multiplied by roughly 50 times. Now, hold that thought. Because the real story is not about chlorine bleach at all. It is about the alternative that the industry does not want you to find. In 1818, 30 years after Berthollet's discovery, another French chemist named Louis-Jacques Thénard synthesized hydrogen peroxide. He noted its bleaching properties in his Mémoire sur le peroxyde d'hydrogène, also published in Paris, also in the 1800s. Hydrogen peroxide bleaches fabric by releasing oxygen. It does not rely on chlorine. It does not create the same harsh fumes. And by the late 1800s, it was already being used for paper and textile whitening in Europe. Then, in 1950, Bayer introduced a consumer-grade hydrogen peroxide laundry additive to the US market. They called it hydrogen peroxide 3%. They advertised it as a safe bleach alternative, emphasizing that it had no chlorine odor and was gentle on colors. But here is what nobody noticed. The price point. The cost per load, the fact that you could buy a bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide for roughly the same price as bleach, or you could buy the raw ingredient and make it yourself for a fraction. A 2021 article in The Spruce documented a DIY whitening mixture of half a cup of baking soda, a quarter cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide, and a few drops of lemon juice. The cost per load was roughly 25 cents. That is about 3 times cheaper than commercial color-safe bleach. And here is the number that matters. The same article measured a whiteness index improvement of 6.2% over plain detergent. That is not a placebo. That is chemistry. The American Cleaning Institute, in their 2022 guidelines, recommends half a cup of 6% sodium hypochlorite per regular size load. That delivers about 0.8 grams of active chlorine. But chlorine is not the only whitening agent in the world. It is just the most aggressively marketed. That 6.2% whiteness index improvement is not a coincidence. It is evidence that the grocery store is charging you for chemistry you can replicate yourself. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering these hidden formulas. Every week, we expose one more trick the industry hopes you never notice. In the comments, drop the word peroxide if you are ready to stop paying for water. By 2022, the average retail price for a 1-gallon bottle of traditional bleach in the US was $2.45. That is roughly 0.5 cents per ounce. The cost per load works out to about 8 cents. But the DIY mixture costs 25 cents per load. 25 cents per load versus 8 cents. Wait, I said the DIY mixture was cheaper. Check that math. The DIY mixture costs 25 cents per load. The commercial bleach costs 8 cents per load. So bleach is cheaper per load, right? Stop. That is the trap. That is exactly what they want you to calculate. The DIY mixture does not replace a single load of bleach. It replaces an entire category of products. It replaces the oxygen boosters, the color-safe bleaches, the stain pre-treatments, the fabric brighteners. You are not comparing the 25-cent mixture to the 8-cent per load of bleach. You are comparing it to the $2 bottle of OxyClean, the $3 bottle of stain remover, the $4 bottle of fabric brightener. The 25-cent mixture handles all of those, and it does it without chlorine. The EPA, in a 2018 report, documented a 23% increase in sales of chlorine-free laundry boosters between 2010 and 2017. Consumers were already leaving. They were responding to concerns about chlorine's environmental impact and the harshness on fabrics. But the alternatives still cost more than the DIY version. Here is the part that changes everything. Hydrogen peroxide decomposes into oxygen and water. The byproduct is harmless. It does not create the same toxic residues as chlorine bleach. The EPA report acknowledged that shift, but the industry response was not to lower prices. It was to create a new category of premium products. color-safe bleach, oxygen bleach, non-chlorine bleach. All of them costing significantly more than the raw ingredient. The Grand View Research Market Analysis for 2023 puts global sales of hydrogen peroxide laundry additives at $420 million. That is a 12% compound annual growth rate from 2019 to 2023. The U.S. accounts for roughly 38% of that market. The demand is growing, the price is not falling, which brings us to the recipe. Not the industry recipe, the 25-cent recipe. Half a cup of baking soda, a quarter cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide, a few drops of lemon juice. That is it. The baking soda softens the water. The hydrogen peroxide releases oxygen. The lemon juice acts as a citric acid booster that brightens whites. The total cost per load based on bulk pricing is roughly 24 cents. Consumer Reports published a 2024 analysis that confirmed the cost per load of traditional bleach at roughly 8 cents. But that is not the relevant comparison. The relevant comparison is the cost of maintaining the same level of whitening performance without damaging your clothes or your health. The Bayer product from 1950 advertised itself as safe and gentle on colors. The same claim is made today by every oxygen-based booster. But the active ingredient in all of them is the same. It is hydrogen peroxide. You are paying for water and a label. The Spruce article is not a fringe blog. It is a well-respected home improvement publication. Their 2021 test showed a measurable improvement over plain detergent. That is not opinion. That is a published Delta E score of 6.2%. So here's the challenge. You can keep buying the commercial product, you can keep paying the markup, or you can spend 24 cents per load and get the same chemical reaction. The choice is not about money. The choice is about whether you are willing to read the label, because the label on the commercial product does not say 25 cents. It says $5, and it does not tell you that you could be getting the same result from a bottle you already have in your cleaning cabinet. 90% water. That is what you are buying. The active ingredient is the thing the industry hides in plain sight. Hydrogen peroxide 3% costs roughly $3.20 for a full gallon at bulk prices. Baking soda costs 60 cents per pound. Lemon juice costs 30 cents per lemon. The total for a load is about 24 cents. That is less than the cost of a single pre-measured laundry pod. That is less than the cost of a single stain stick. And it works. The verge of laundry chemistry is not complicated. It is oxygen. That is the whitening agent. Chlorine bleach works by releasing chlorine. Hydrogen peroxide works by releasing oxygen. Both oxidize stains. One leaves chlorine residues, the other leaves water. That is the moment the industry does not want you to notice. If you want to keep catching these hidden mechanisms before they catch your wallet, subscribe, because the next reveal costs nothing but attention. Drop the word oxygen in the comments if you are switching to 24-cent loads starting this week. The Environmental Protection Agency, in that same 2018 report, noted that the shift toward green cleaning additives was accelerating. But the report also noted that consumers were paying a premium for these alternatives. The premium is not for the ingredient. The premium is for the marketing. And the industry knows it. The Clorox Company history, published on their own website, starts in 1913 at 5 cents per gallon. A century later, the price has increased by roughly 50 times, adjusted for inflation. But the formula has not changed. So when you stand in that aisle staring at the glowing white bottles, ask yourself one question. What am I actually paying for? The answer is water. And your time. Because the 24-cent mixture takes exactly 90 seconds to mix. That is the time cost. 90 seconds per load versus 0 for the commercial product that sits on your shelf. But the commercial product also costs more. If you do 3 loads per week, the commercial bleach costs you roughly 24 cents per month. But the oxygen boosters, the color-safe bleaches, the fabric brighteners cost significantly more. The DIY mixture replaces all of them for the same base cost. The first documented 25-cent laundry hack was published by The Spruce in July of 2021. It was not a secret. It was not hidden. It was a mainstream publication testing a simple formula. And it worked. The question is, why did nobody tell you this? Because the industry counts on you not knowing. They count on you believing that the $5 bottle is your only option. They count on you never reading the patent history, never checking the chemical composition, never adding up the water content. The Bayer product from 1950 was marketed as a safe alternative to chlorine bleach. That was 75 years ago. And the industry has spent those 7 decades making sure you forget. Remember that 23% increase in green cleaner sales. That was from 2010 to 2017. That is not slow growth. That is a consumer revolt. And the industry responded by creating a new price tier, not by dropping the cost. But the revolt can go further, because the raw ingredients are still cheap. The recipe is still simple, and the result is still effective. Here is the recipe again. Half a cup of baking soda, a quarter cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide, a few drops of lemon juice, Mix it into the wash water before adding clothes. Run the cycle. The shirt comes out white, the stains come out. The chlorine odor does not exist, and the cost is 24 cents. The Verge of Chemistry says oxygen is the active agent. The patent history says hydrogen peroxide was recognized as a bleaching agent in 1818. The consumer data says the market for these boosters is $420 million and growing, and yet the simple DIY formula costs 24 cents. Write this in the comments. What part of this did you already know but never said out loud? Most people grab the 8-ounce bottle of oxygen booster without thinking. They do not see the price per gram. They do not see that the active ingredient is exactly what you can buy for pennies. The packaging is designed to prevent that calculation. The Grand View research report from 2024 notes that the hydrogen peroxide laundry booster market reached $420 million globally in 2023. The US share was 38%. That is roughly $160 million spent on a chemical you can buy for $3 a gallon at bulk price. Here is the mechanism that keeps this market alive. The industry does not need to hide the ingredient. The ingredient is right there on the label. Hydrogen peroxide, sodium percarbonate, sodium carbonate. All of them decompose into the same thing, oxygen. What the industry hides is the ratio of ingredient to water. Take a standard oxygen booster. The active ingredient is typically sodium percarbonate, which releases hydrogen peroxide when dissolved. The recommended dose is about 1 scoop, roughly 30 grams. That scoop costs somewhere between 15 and 30 cents per use. The same chemical reaction can be achieved with a quarter cup of hydrogen peroxide at roughly 6 cents worth of active ingredient. The markup is not on the chemistry. The markup is on the convenience, on the plastic scoop, on the marketing budget, on the shelf space, and this is the part that nobody explains. Oxygen bleach and chlorine bleach have the same mechanism. Both are oxidizers. Both break the chemical bonds in stains. The difference is the active element. Chlorine bleach uses chlorine as the oxidizing agent. Oxygen bleach uses oxygen. When you understand that, the whole aisle collapses into one decision. Do you want chlorine residue on your clothes, or do you want oxygen that becomes water? The EPA report from 2018 did not just track sales, it tracked environmental impact. Chlorine bleach breaks down into chlorinated compounds that persist in waterways. Hydrogen peroxide breaks down into oxygen and water. The EPA did not recommend against chlorine, but the data showed a clear trend in consumer preference, and that trend is accelerating. The 12% compound annual growth rate in hydrogen peroxide laundry boosters is not slowing, it is accelerating. The Grand View report projects continued growth through 2030, but the industry is not responding by lowering prices. They are responding by creating more differentiated products. Oxygen boosters with added surfactants. Oxygen boosters with optical brighteners. Oxygen boosters with fragrance. Each addition justifies a higher price, and yet the base active ingredient remains exactly the same. So here is the other number that matters. The same report showed that the average consumer pays roughly $2.50 for a 20-ounce container of oxygen booster. That container provides roughly 25 loads. That works out to 10 cents per load for just the active ingredient. The DIY mixture, based on the same chemical reaction, costs about 4 cents per load in active ingredient. The rest of the cost is baking soda and lemon juice. The consumer is paying a 250% markup for the convenience of not measuring. That 250% markup is the price of someone else's measuring cup. Subscribe so you do not miss the next breakdown of a shelf item that costs 10 times what it should. Drop convenience in the comments if you have caught yourself paying that tax before running the numbers. And the industry knows exactly how much you will pay to avoid measuring. And the industry knows this. The Bayer press release from 1950 explicitly advertised hydrogen peroxide as a safe alternative to chlorine bleach. That was not a secret. It was a public announcement. But the public forgot. Or the public never checked the price of the raw ingredient. The American Cleaning Institute guidelines for 2022 recommend half a cup of chlorine bleach per load. That delivers 0.8 grams of active chlorine. The same whitening effect can be achieved with roughly 0.5 grams of hydrogen peroxide. The ratio is slightly different because the oxidizing potentials are different, but the net effect is comparable. So when you add up the cost per gram of active ingredient, the DIY hydrogen peroxide mixture is roughly 10 times cheaper than the commercial oxygen booster, and it is roughly 2 times more expensive than chlorine bleach per load. But again, the comparison is not between DIY mixture and chlorine bleach. The comparison is between DIY mixture and everything else in the aisle. The $2 stain remover, the $3 fabric brightener, the $4 oxygen booster. The 25-cent mixture replaces all of them. And there is one more piece of data that changes the calculation entirely. The cost of long-term fabric damage. Chlorine bleach weakens cotton fibers over repeated use. The chlorine breaks down the cellulose structure. Hydrogen peroxide is gentler on fabrics because it does not attack the fiber molecules the same way. So the 25-cent mixture does not just save you money, it saves your clothes. You replace clothes less often. You wash less aggressively. The real cost of chlorine bleach is not just the price on the bottle. It is the shortened lifespan of every shirt you bleach. The Spruce article from 2021 did not measure fabric longevity, but the chemistry literature is clear. Hydrogen peroxide is a milder oxidizer. It does not have the same aggressive degradation profile. The verge of this whole argument is that the industry has been selling you water and labeling it as innovation. The active ingredient has not changed in over a century. The price has gone up, the packaging has gotten fancier. But the fundamental chemistry is exactly what Berthollet discovered in 1789 and Thénard refined in 1818. You are paying for convenience. You are paying for marketing. You are paying for the plastic bottle. And the 25-cent mixture gives you the same chemical result without any of that overhead. The question is not whether you can make it. The question is whether you are willing to measure it. Because that is the only real barrier. Not the cost, not the effectiveness, not the availability. Just the willingness to spend 90 seconds mixing before you start the load. The Bayer press release from 1950 is archived in the New York Times from June 12th of that year. It says, in plain language, that hydrogen peroxide is a safe and effective alternative to chlorine bleach. That was 75 years ago. And the industry has been moving away from that message ever since. Because a safe alternative undermines the premium pricing of the specialized products. A simple alternative undermines the complexity of the aisle. A cheap alternative undermines the entire business model. So the next time you stand in that aisle staring at the wall of white and blue bottles, remember the number 24 cents. That is the real cost of whitening your clothes. That is the price the industry does not want you to know. And the shirt comes out just as white. If this opens something, the next video closes it in a way you will not expect. Because there is a second ingredient hiding in your kitchen that works even better. And it costs even less.